Have you ever wondered what waits nearly 11 kilometers beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean? Down there, sunlight has completely vanished. The pressure is so extreme that an ordinary vessel would be crushed almost instantly. And yet, life still moves through the darkness. Our cameras can illuminate only a tiny fragment of this world at any one moment. Beyond that narrow beam is nothing but black water. Tonight, we are descending toward Challenger Deep, the deepest known region of the ocean. We will follow the creatures that survive along the way, revisit one of history's most extraordinary dives, and investigate the strange shadows and sounds that make the abyss feel almost alive. But remember one thing as we begin. The deepest mystery is waiting at the bottom. At the surface, the Pacific looks almost ordinary. Waves rise beneath the dark morning sky, while the research team prepares a vehicle built for a place humans were never designed to survive. Every window, seal, cable, and pressure boundary matters. Once the submersible leaves the ship, there is no easy way back. The first few hundred meters still belong to the familiar ocean. Sunlight filters through the water. Schools of fish surround the vehicle, and the surface remains visible far above. But the descent changes quickly. As we enter the twilight zone, daylight weakens. Transparent jelly-like animals drift through the blue, their bodies almost invisible until the headlights touch them. Some look so delicate that it seems impossible they could survive here. Then the blue begins to disappear. Below roughly 1,000 meters, the ocean becomes a world without sunlight. The submersible's headlights are no longer helping us see the environment. They are creating the only visible world that exists around us. And everything outside that light is unknown. The midnight zone feels less like an ocean and more like empty space. Marine snow drifts slowly through the headlights, tiny fragments of organic material falling from the world above. Occasionally, something flashes at the edge of visibility, a transparent animal, a brief pulse of bioluminescence, a strange fish moving through the darkness before disappearing again. This is where the human mind begins playing tricks. A small animal passing close to the camera can appear enormous. A distant rock can become a moving silhouette. Suspended particles can distort size and distance until something ordinary looks impossible. And there is another force surrounding us that cannot be seen: pressure. With every kilometer of descent, the weight of the water above increases. The submersible's pressure sphere is engineered to resist that force, but outside its hull, the environment has become lethal to an unprotected human. Then, the darkness ahead changes. For the first time, the headlights begin to catch something below, the seafloor. But this is not the bottom of our journey. It is only the entrance. At roughly 4 kilometers down, the submersible reaches the abyssal plain. Fine sediment covers the bottom, interrupted by scattered rocks and small animals moving slowly through the mud. There are sea cucumbers here, soft-bodied creatures adapted to a world with almost no light and very little food. Nearby, small crustaceans emerge from the sediment when the robotic sampler touches the bottom. Nothing here looks like a giant monster, and somehow that makes the environment more unsettling. Life survives by using almost everything that reaches the seafloor. Food can be scarce, and opportunities may be separated by long periods of darkness and emptiness. Ahead, the flat plain begins to change. The bottom drops away into a vast canyon. The lights reveal fractured rock, steep slopes, and sediment falling through the water like snow. This is the entrance to the Hadal world, the deepest trenches on Earth. As the vehicle crosses the edge, the landscape becomes steeper, narrower, and darker. And from here, every meter takes us farther from the world humans know. Inside the trench, life becomes harder to find, but it does not disappear. Small amphipods move through the lights. Their pale, translucent bodies look almost fragile. Yet these animals have adapted to conditions that would destroy most surface organisms. When food appears, they gather quickly. From a close camera angle, an amphipod can look enormous. Pull back only a few centimeters and its true scale becomes obvious. This is an important lesson in the deep ocean. Perspective can deceive us. The same problem applies to mysterious shapes. As the submersible scans a steep wall, a large shadow appears behind drifting sediment. For an instant, its outline seems to move. The camera turns. Nothing. Later, from another angle, a fractured rock formation creates a remarkably similar silhouette. Was the first shadow also rock? Possibly, but one frame is not enough to know. Science does not begin by declaring something a monster. It begins by asking what evidence would be needed to identify it. And we are still descending. Far below us lies a depth where even familiar deep-sea animals begin reaching their limits. At greater Hadal depths, one of the most remarkable animals we encounter is a pale snailfish. It does not look powerful. It has no armor, enormous teeth, or terrifying jaws. Its body is soft, almost translucent, and perfectly suited to a place where pressure dominates every aspect of survival. Nearby, amphipods move across the sediment, while unusual single-celled organisms form strange structures on the seafloor. Seen without context, some of these organisms could easily belong in science fiction, but they are real. That may be the most fascinating part of the deep ocean. Nature does not need imaginary monsters to create forms that look alien. Beyond the headlight beam, however, visibility remains extremely limited. The submersible may be surrounded by kilometers of water, yet the crew can see only a narrow corridor. A faint metallic sound reminds us of the pressure outside. The vehicle continues deeper. Then the dark reflection in the observation window begins to change. The modern expedition fades away, and suddenly we are looking back more than 6 decades to one of the most extraordinary moments in exploration history. In 1960, the bathyscaphe Trieste descended into the Mariana Trench, carrying Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh. Compared with modern deep-sea vehicles, Trieste looked enormous and primitive. A large float structure sat above a small pressure sphere containing the 2 men. Their world inside was cramped. Outside was darkness, pressure, and a descent into a place no humans had ever directly visited before. As Trieste approached the bottom, the seafloor appeared beneath the vessel. Fine sediment rose around the pressure sphere, reducing visibility until almost everything beyond the tiny observation window disappeared. Imagine being there. No high-definition cameras surrounding the vehicle, no modern digital displays. No immediate rescue. Only 2 people inside a small sphere at the deepest frontier humans had ever reached. The dive proved that people could physically reach this extraordinary environment and return, but it did not reveal everything. A cloud of sediment can hide an entire scene only meters away. Today, our technology is dramatically better, so we return to the present. And the modern submersible continues downward toward the deepest basin. In 1960, the bathyscaphe Trieste descended into the Mariana Trench carrying Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh. Compared with modern deep-sea vehicles, Trieste looked enormous and primitive. A large float structure sat above a small pressure sphere containing the 2 men. Their world inside was cramped. Outside was darkness, pressure, and a descent into a place no humans had ever directly visited before. As Trieste approached the bottom, the seafloor appeared beneath the vessel. Fine sediment rose around the pressure sphere, reducing visibility until almost everything beyond the tiny observation window disappeared. Imagine being there. No high-definition cameras surrounding the vehicle, no modern digital displays, no immediate rescue. Only 2 people inside a small sphere at the deepest frontier humans had ever reached. The dive proved that people could physically reach this extraordinary environment and return, but it did not reveal everything. A cloud of sediment can hide an entire scene only meters away. Today, our technology is dramatically better, so we return to the present, and the modern submersible continues downward toward the deepest basin. Inside a small sample of Hadal sediment, microbial communities survive under extraordinary conditions. Pull back from that microscopic world, and the contrast becomes almost impossible to comprehend. A living community exists inside a tiny container. The container sits in a robotic arm. The arm belongs to a submersible, and the submersible itself is almost invisible compared with the enormous trench around it. Then the slope begins leveling out. Ahead lies a broad sediment-covered basin, Challenger Deep. At this depth, there is no sunlight. Outside the artificial lights, the ocean is completely black. The floor appears almost empty. Fine, pale sediment stretches ahead while tiny amphipods move through the illuminated area. The scene is not filled with giant predators. There are no enormous jaws waiting beneath the vehicle. Instead, the deepest known ocean environment feels quiet, almost motionless. And that silence creates its own kind of fear. Because our lights illuminate only a tiny piece of the bottom, the rest of Challenger Deep remains hidden beyond them. Then, once again, something seems to move outside the beam. The headlights sweep across the sediment. For a moment, a large darkness moves beyond the illuminated floor. Then it disappears. No face, no teeth, no clear body, only movement. The safest conclusion is also the least dramatic. We do not have enough information to identify what the camera saw. So, the submersible investigates. The lights reveal rippled sediment, a low ridge, and empty black water. Back at the surface, researchers compare images and acoustic data. A shadow could be terrain. Suspended sediment can distort an object's boundaries. A smaller animal at the wrong distance can appear much larger than it really is. This is where deep-sea mystery becomes most powerful. Not because evidence proves that monsters are hiding here, but because obtaining evidence at all is extraordinarily difficult. Consider the scale. If a mountain comparable to Everest were placed inside the Mariana Trench, the deepest region would still extend farther down. And above the submersible is nearly 11 kilometers of ocean. The vehicle's headlights illuminate only meters. That difference between what exists around us and what we can actually observe is enormous. Before leaving, the submersible turns its lights across the deepest floor one final time. Amphipods continue moving through the sediment. The mysterious darkness does not return. Then the ascent begins. The headlights rise away from Challenger Deep until the seafloor disappears below. Through the Hadal zone, the trench walls gradually widen. Gelatinous organisms reappear. Farther upward, the midnight zone gives way to faint blue light. Eventually, schools of fish become visible again. After hours surrounded by blackness, sunlight feels almost unnatural. The vehicle reaches the surface beside the research ship as morning light spreads across the Pacific. Samples are recovered, camera recordings are reviewed. The expedition has returned with images of amphipods, delicate hadal animals, strange single-celled structures, sediment microbes, and an environment more extreme than almost anywhere else on Earth. But the most important discovery may be what we did not find. There was no evidence of a gigantic, hidden monster. Yet Challenger Deep remains mysterious. Because even after reaching the bottom, we observed only a tiny fraction of an enormous world. And when the cameras leave, the darkness returns. Now the submersible is gone, only the trench remains. Tiny creatures continue moving through the sediment while darkness stretches far beyond anything our cameras could reveal. So here is the question. If you could send one camera into the deepest unexplored part of the ocean, would you really want to see what comes back? Tell us in the comments. And if you want to descend deeper into Earth's strangest places, hit like and subscribe to Dark Beyond. Because the deeper we go, the stranger our world becomes.